Hi guys, welcome back. Today we'll be taking a look at some of the Chinese stocks listed in the US. Before we begin, remember take a second to give the video a like and subscribe as it will greatly help out the channel. Without further ado, let's first start off with Alibaba. The ticker is BABA. So just last week, it seems to be consolidating sideways. There was actually not much movement, even though we established a new high. You can see that we actually hit 99.32 for this particular day, and we failed to clear the $100 psychological resistance. In fact, 78.6% at 9806 turned to be a strong resistance for BABA. So on the way down, there are some supports to be watching, and they are at 61.8%, 92.35, 1990, and 88.04. So all of these will act as a strong resistance for BABA. Furthermore, you can see that this red line and this blue line is currently at just above the $90 psychological support, where there should be some support coming in for this particular area here. However, that said, there is also this particular gap that needs to be filled, and the low of the gap is 84.07 to a high of 86.73. So let's move on to the next stock, which is Tencent. So Tencent is actually pretty weak. You can see that from its recent swing, we are actually looking towards its 78.6% at 46.36, and we still can't seem to pass this resistance here. And after we actually go above it the very next day, we started to fall below it. So from the recent swing of 41.44 to 46.95, we are looking at supports at 45.77, 44.85, and also 44.20, which is in fact pretty tight ranging. The blue line is currently at 44.20, while the red line is currently at 45.06. Gap to close, it's around 44.25. Don't forget that both Alibaba and Tencent, we are actually approaching the clouds, so do expect a lot of cloud resistance. As you can see, previously we hit the cloud resistance many occasions and we failed to penetrate it. So this time around, hopefully we can actually penetrate through the clouds. Let's move on to NetEase. So NetEase, like I said, a very strong counter. You can see that 61.8% $100 psychological resistance was cleared, and we are looking towards 78.6% and 107.58. We hit 107 and sellers started to appear and started to pull back down. That's it. We actually pulled back down to this 61.8% here, and the buyers started to come back immediately. So that is a good sign. Furthermore, you can see that this blue line, conversion line, acted as a very strong support and the $100 psychological support level. And if we were to pull back down lower, then we're looking at 95.68, which coincides with this 50% Fibonacci support level. So this particular counter looks pretty strong for now. Let's move on to NIO. So for NIO, you can see that it's already approaching the cloud soon. So as you can see, clouds act as a very strong resistance. And this time around, even though the cloud is less thick, it will also be a resistance. So hopefully this week, we can actually punch up through this cloud and then go up even further. So from its recent low of 11.67 to recent high of 23.98, we are looking at 17.83. So 17.83 have to hold for now before we can test a strong resistance at 19.28. So 19.28 is a very, very strong resistance for this particular counter. And if we can surpass it, then we're looking at $20 psychological resistance before testing 21.35. That said, if we actually start pulling down next week, we're looking at 17.38, 16.16, and 15.30 as potential supports. Looking at this blue conversion line, we're looking at 16.50 as a first support before pulling back down to 15.30. And at the same time, it's a 50% Fibonacci support for this red baseline. Let's move on to JD.com. So JD.com, on its recent swing, we were seeing it at 46.83 to a high of 65.29. But unfortunately, you can see the 61.8% here is a very strong resistance for JD, and we were kind of rejected off on many occasions. Furthermore, it's also the cloud resistance. So you can see that this is the cloud resistance here. And now we are approaching the cloud for resistance. So if we can actually punch up, then we're looking at 61.34 and 65.29. However, if we start pulling back down, if the resistance is too strong and sellers start to appear, we're looking at the first support at 56.04, 44.07, 52.69. At the same time, you can see that now JD is holding well by its red baseline at 56.06, and we just closed the week just above it. If we start pulling back down, then we're looking at this blue conversion line at 53.75, and at the same time, it will close this gap that was created on 27th of May. Let's move on to Baidu, or BIDU. So Baidu, you can see that it is in fact pretty strong as well. From the Fibonacci of 101 to a high of 158, it actually already hit this resistance at 8.6% at 146.46, and it seems to be consolidating sideways rather than having a huge sell down. So that is a good sign for now until sellers start to appear. So the supports to watch would be 139 or 140, 134.36, and 130.47. That said, if we can actually surpass this 146, then I'm looking at around 158 after clearing the $150 psychological resistance. And at the same time, you can see that this blue conversion line is at 130, which is a very strong psychological support, and also at 124.30 with this red baseline. Not forgetting that we actually have already surpassed the clouds. So hopefully on the way down, the cloud will act as a support. So previous resistance act as a support before we go back up. So that's a good sign. You can see that clearly this is a low here, this is a higher low, this is a high here, and this is a higher high. So if we can create a wave pattern like this, that would be good. It shows that we are on a potential short-term uptrend. So let's move on to PDD. So PDD, you can see that from recent low 31.01 to recent high 55.38, we actually surpassed all resistance, and we were actually holding this 50, 60 and above the $50 psychological support. So this is a pretty good stock, and we seems to be trending up. Clearly, you can see the low here, higher low here, and then this wave pattern that we are creating. So if we do pull back down, then we can go back up once again. And if we can start breaking above this 55.38, then we may be looking towards $60 to even close this particular gap here on this particular day, which was around 57.89. There's this gap here that needs to be closed around $1 to $2 gap. That said, if we start pulling back down, then we're looking at 49.38, 46.59, and 44.62 as a potential supports for PDD. And Pinduoduo also, you can see that this blue conversion line is 44.62, or this red baseline is around $42 psychological support. Furthermore, on the way down, you can see that hopefully this particular counter, this cloud can act as a support because it has already surpassed its resistance for its cloud. So that is a good strength for now. Let's move on to KWEB or Crane shares. So you can see that Crane shares on its recent swing, we are looking at 23.72 to a high of 32.83. And 61.8% seems to be holding pretty well for now after we actually crossed it. But the question is whether or not this week we are able to surpass it to test the $30 psychological resistance once again before testing 38.88 and 32.83. Do bear in mind that we are actually in the clouds, so there is a lot of cloud resistance, and at the same time there is also a lot of cloud support. So looking at its support level between 9, 28.05 and 27.37. This blue conversion line is coming at 27.37, and also red baseline is at $27 exactly. So 27.37, it coincides with this 50% Fibonacci support level. So this will be tend to be quite a strong support level for KWEB. For CWEB, after its reverse split, there's actually not much movement, but you can clearly see that it's slightly weaker than KWEB because we are only at this 50% Fibonacci support at 61.28. If we can surpass it, then we're looking at a very hard resistance at 66.20 before testing on 63.22 and 82.15. That said, there's a lot of cloud resistance. You can clearly see that there is we are currently trying to penetrate through the clouds, and we have cloud resistance all the way until $85. Looking at its supports, if we start to pull back down, then we are looking at 59, 57, 55.94, 53.40, and $50 psychological support here. The blue conversion line and the red baseline is acting as a strong support as well. It's currently pretty close at 53.40 and 52.30 respectively. So let's move on to our last particular counter, which is FXI, or iShares China Large Cap ETF. So from its recent swing, its low was around 27.83, and the previous high was 34.39 here. So you can see that we already surpassed the 61.8% at 31.88, and we actually closed the week just around that level, 31.87. So very similar situation. We are forming this wave pattern, and there is also this cloud resistance here. So if we do pull back down slightly before we can go back up, what we want to see is this previous resistance here turning to support. That will be good, but we shouldn't break it. Once we break down, then that will not be a good scenario. So looking at its next resistance, we're looking at $33 before testing 34.39 for FXI. If we start pulling back down, then we're looking at 31.48, 30.70, and 30.15 as potential supports. This blue conversion line is at 30.77, and this red baseline coincides with this 50% Fibonacci support at 30.15. So overall, the Chinese stocks looks good, and most of them are already out of their cloud resistance. And hopefully this week we can continue with this bullish momentum, and there is no bad news or there's no unexpected sell-off. So if there's any changes, I'll give you guys an update. Thanks for stopping by. Till we meet again, appreciate the manipulation.